This Thrive Loud episode is brought to you by Hinge Consulting. Success on Amazon hinges on well-executed strategies. Contact Hinge Consulting to learn about total Amazon channel management and to see if your business has what it takes to grow over 300% over the next 12 months. That's Hinge Consulting at hingeconsulting.co.
Now I'm getting really excited. Okay, this is the part where we're going to get loud.
Holy crap, here we go.
I like telling stories.
I learn best through experiences.
Everything I do is because of everything I did.
Talk about having maximum impact while having a ton of fun.
When you can net through that, what you do leave behind for your listener will have more impact.
Wow, bring it on.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. Today on Thrive Loud, we bring you a technology consultant extraordinaire, an active speaker and writer. He is an expert on topics that include cybersecurity, information technology strategy, governance and execution, and digital and business transformation. His ability to explain complex IT and cybersecurity topics in a plain, easily understood, and actionable language is what makes him awesome. He has a new book out that we're going to talk about in this conversation. Thrive Loud listeners, we are honored. We have Chris Moschovitis here with us today. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
So this is really great. I get to have access to a lot of amazing leaders, a lot of really brilliant people, and I also have the pleasure of going to a lot of very fun events. And it's really cool when you go to a book launch and you have a crowd as educated, smart, and good-looking as this audience was at the Yale Club on the launch of his new book. So we had, Chris was there. I got to meet his better half and lots of other fun people. And at that, I said, wow, I got to have this guy on because his talk was great. He's got a great story. And I wanted to kick it off a little bit because you've had a great career, a lot of expertise that's going on. Can we spin into kind of how this particular project, which is actually, I think, your fifth book, if I'm correct, how this came to light.
That's right.
And why you specifically wrote this one.
You're right. It's been a storied career. I've been in technology for 30 years and in cybersecurity for at least the past 15. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I mentioned in the book that me and one of my original partners used to collect viruses back in the days of floppy disks. And George still has his floppy disk with all the viruses still on it. One of the things that we have always prided ourselves and we always did was try to connect with the executives and the business owners and boards in plain English so they can understand technology and cybersecurity. And one of the things that I found lacking in a very, very big way over the past few years was an understanding of the impact of cybersecurity into business. People didn't understand it. They thought it was a technology problem. They dismissed it. They really didn't want to hear it. They were deaf to this very clear and present danger. So that was the driver behind the book. And I wanted to write the book so that I can reach people in plain language and explain what this thing is all about, how it is not a technology problem, how it is a risk problem, and how it is a people problem, and the things that we need to do to understand it and protect our businesses and our lives.
And I think it's such a great point because I think a lot of times when people are intimidated, let's call it what it is, by sometimes what they don't know and scared about understanding how, there is some complexity if it's not natural to you, and specifically as it relates to business, when you're dealing with these technical issues. And that hurdle many times can make it the biggest challenge of all. It almost seems scarier than it can be. So the ability for you to help to bridge it and bring up a very good point that it's a risk issue. And then having people understand that. So I guess from your expertise in the past And maybe let's rewind a little bit here for those that are listening. You have a little bit of an accent. Give a little bit of background of where you're from originally and how that all brought to here, because I think the listeners will actually like a little bit about your background.
Oh, I'd be delighted. So I was born and raised in Athens, Greece. I am the son of an international journalist, the Walter Cronkite of Europe, and he casted a very long shadow. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to cast my own shadow. So at age 20, I decided to immigrate to the United States. I went to the university in upstate New York, where I studied physics, mathematics, and computer science. I then did graduate work in management and education and organizational change. Moved to New York, was in academia for a while as academic computing director at Pratt. Then I was vice president of technology at the O'Connell Group. And after that, about 30 years ago, I started my business, the Technology Management Group, and it was focusing specifically in providing high-end technology and management expertise to mid-market companies, because mid-market companies very specifically could not afford, nor could they retain that level of high-end expertise, a CIO, a CTO, and the depth of bench required to run technology as a strategic asset, not just as a commodity.
Perfect. And it's such a need that's out there in lots of different companies still today. I want to now jump back here as it relates to today's world and cybersecurity and the risks that we're talking about. Help bring to light here from the seat that you've been in, the most common and frequent risk issues that are taking place from the human end, or how people are dealing it, and what's the biggest problem that companies are facing as it relates to this particular area.
I think you nailed it earlier when you referenced communications and understanding of both technology and cybersecurity issues vis-a-vis risk. I think that there is a substantial communications gap between technology folks, cybersecurity folks, and business people. It's the classic line. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Right? So what has happened, first of all, with technology itself, technology has become so prevalent and so omnipresent in our lives. It's being viewed as a commodity. So people are dealing with it as a commodity, which is perfectly fine insofar as you understand in the absence of this commodity, you're out of business. So This is not just plain a commodity. It is a mission critical commodity. So then cybersecurity, and incidentally, information technology generates value. That's what its role in life is. IT in every form, even if it is because you've spun up your word processor and writing a document, you're generating value through the use of technology. Cybersecurity, on the other hand, its mission in life is to protect this value.
Right.
As a result, it's a parallel track. Neither of them reports to one another. It is essentially a risk management function. It's a risk management function squarely focused on information security and specifically on information technology security, but that's what it is. It's a risk function. And that's what we need to understand. And exactly like you mentioned earlier, if there is, in the absence of understanding, then it is poo-pooed and relegated. Okay, this is a technology problem. Talk to the guys in the dark room with the blinking lights and, we throw raw meat in there and they deal with this. But the fact of the matter is that it's not like that. And if there is no top-down leadership in establishing a good cybersecurity program, good cybersecurity principles, and so on and so forth, then the company is at extreme risk. And the most common risk is straight out data exfiltration. People will take your data and sell it, or they will take your data and lock it and ask for money.
I got a good question.
The typical ransomware.
Yeah, no, sorry. And thank you. And I had a good question here that relates right to this. There are lots of ways that technology consultants and experts can help to communicate that message. And many times, fear is a good way to get that point across, and that has been something that's kind of been an impetus of cybersecurity for a while. Hey, if you don't do this, you're not protecting as you say, it's to make sure that you protect the information that you have and you deal with this. From your perspective as a consultant and in your past, have you found that the best tactic is to actually almost use what could go wrong as a way to give your message across so that they understand the importance of it? Or more on the the light side of saying not to be afraid of it, but to make them feel more comfortable and safe? Which angle do you think has more of an effective way to get leaders to understand the importance?
You have a talent in going right to the heart of the matter, and I think that the question that you're asking is just absolutely critical to this conversation. And Anna Mary, whom you met, who is my wife and partner in the business,
you married well, by the way.
I married well. Yes, thank you. So she mentions that where we are in cybersecurity today is where we were with seatbelts in cars in the 70s. If you recall, there were regulations passed in the 70s requiring and mandating the use of seatbelts, and there was outrage. The car manufacturers were like, that's going to drive the price of the car to gazillions. And people was like, you're interfering with my personal freedom, done it, and so on and so forth. Right now, though, so many years later, a few decades later, nobody goes inside the car without even immediately putting the seatbelt on. It's just a habit. Another example is cigarettes. Back in the day, people would say, the Surgeon General would say, listen, smoking can cause cancer, can heart disease, and so on and so forth. And people would coming back and say, well, my grandfather smoked 3 packs a day and lived to 105. That's right, but that's not how you manage risk. So this is where we are with cybersecurity right now. And the issue of trying to convey cybersecurity risk through the use of fear only works marginally because people are not motivated by fear in the sense that if you go to a business owner and say, listen, you're going to have to spend X thousands of dollars to develop a cybersecurity program and then run it and establish best practices in the company, they will turn around and say, wait a minute, you are adding a one-time plus monthly expense to me for what? For quote-unquote protection, okay? But I haven't been hacked. All of these years to date, I haven't been hacked. So I'm safe. So I'm not going to spend that money. I will spend that money when I get hacked, which is absolutely the wrong thing to say because, by the way, you have been hacked. You probably don't know it, but you have been hacked. And if you address cybersecurity from an incident response point of view, instead from a planning point of view, you are going to bleed out money because once something hits, and your data is gone or your reputation is gone or God knows what happens, that is going to cost you an enormous amount of money, way more money than it would have costed you to prevent it to begin with, or to at least establish a methodology where you prevent it, make it difficult for people to hack you, and then establish a way for you to recover faster. So the way that we approach this is by going in and educating people and facing the problem head on, explaining to them that we're not going to be here to terrorize you. I'm not going to give you the horror stories that you read every day in the newspapers. I am going to explain to you what does this mean for your business. And you as a business person are in the habit of making risk decisions, and I will respect your risk decisions. I will respect your risk acceptance. So I'm going to lay down the risk for you, and I am going to explicitly ask you to accept this risk. And if you are not willing to accept this risk, then I'm going to give you options to minimize this risk because risk will never be zero. So tell me what your risk appetite is, and I will build controls, enough controls for the risk to be minimized to your liking.
We are here with Chris Moschovitis, and he is exactly living up to his bio description. He is easily explaining something that can be very complicated. I love the seatbelt analogy, by the way. That is, it's so spot on, and providing that level of comfort is the right way to do this versus hitting off fear. I have a question that someone that you would actually be able to answer, because I know this is something that Thrive Loud listeners in our business community, there's all these misconceptions and beliefs that people have around hackers themselves. Would you say that most hackers are financially motivated and driven and they're out there to try to steal money, or is there a huge population of hackers that are like, I just want to prove that I can get in and mess something up?
Great question. The answer to which is the following. I'm going to twist it around a little bit, and I'll explain why. Cybercrime has a substantial money component to it. So it's the old line: why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So cybercrime happens to a very large extent because that's where the money is. It's very easy to do right now. You can even get cybercrime as a service. You can literally go out and for a few $100s you can make people's lives miserable. So there is a very big financial component to cybercrime. The second, underneath the financial component element of cybercrime, driver of cybercrime, is espionage, nation states, cyber warfare, and so on and so forth. So there is all of these components. So, and the reason why I am referring to this as cybercrime as opposed to hackers is because of the following reason. Hackers are extraordinarily talented people. They're people that not only have a natural talent in computer science, but they have taken this talent and honed it frequently with years worth of training into systems penetration and understanding and so on and so forth. So these are talented scientists, and they deserve respect. Now, granted, some of these talented scientists are being recruited to the dark side, and they are using their talents and their skill for ill. But there is an enormous number of hackers that are white hat hackers that are working day in and day out to protect us. So that's why I try to avoid the use of the word hackers, because to be a hacker is something of respect. In the original terminology, by the way, back in the day, the quote-unquote evil hacker was referred to as a cracker, not as a hacker, because the original terminology of hacker came out of MIT, believe it or not, and it had to do with modeling and trains and systems, all sorts of interesting things. Back history. I digress. I reveal my weakness in computer and science history.
And I love it. So I want to move this into what is without a doubt one of the, in the spirit of it being the space where everything is heading between. I learned this recently. There's two amazing statistics going on out there. From in the advertising world online, 80% of every dollar that's being spent is going towards either Facebook or Google, and as it relates to as it relates to e-commerce, I don't even know what the percentage is, but if you're not doing business on Amazon, you're not in business. So as it relates,
that's right.
As it relates to cybersecurity today, in these very popular, hugely large organizations, I've heard lots of different things. That there's obviously the security of the platform that they have, but as it relates to our user experience and where information is being pulled, and obviously there was security issues that Facebook had faced not too long ago. This is something that can get blown up, and the media has expounded upon, and has caused lots of issues and fears, and lots of other ongoing things, and even Senate meetings for founders of some of these companies. Talk to me about your take on this, both from two sides of it. One, how the large companies are handling cybersecurity in that instance. And from the flip side of that, how individuals can do a good job maybe also being aware of all of this as well.
Right. So once again, you framed this brilliantly. There are three sections to address. One has to do with government, the other one has to do with business, and the other one has to do with the consumer. Right. From a governmental perspective, right now we are in a time of great embarrassment, to say the least, when we are actually having national conversations about eliminating the role of cybersecurity advisor to the president. That's embarrassing. When we have a Senate hearing and the senators cannot phrase or articulate a meaningful question to Zuckerberg, that's embarrassing. So we certainly need to educate our legislators and representatives to what this modern technology and what this modern risk is all about, because people are hacking our elections and so on and so forth. I will not go into that. From a business perspective, there are two sides to this coin. One has to do with a business itself understanding the risk and protecting its assets, which is what cybersecurity is all about. And the other side is, what is your business? In the giants that you mentioned, like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so on and so forth, part of their business is you. When I do cybersecurity awareness training to boards and executives, one of the slides that I put out is two little pigs talking to one another. And one little pig tells to the other little pig, "Wow, isn't this barn great? It's light, it's bright, it's sunny, and all the food is free." And underneath it, it says, "If the food is free, you're on the menu." And we signed up for this. We completely signed up for this. We gave all of our data to Facebook. We give all of our data to Google and to Amazon. And by the way, I'm not leaving anybody else out. I mean, we give all of our data to Microsoft, and we give all of our data to Oracle, and so on and so forth. They are in the data collection business. The most recent event had to do with Alexa, the voice assistant of Amazon, recording private conversations. Well, what do you think is going on? You have a device in your living room that's listening all the time. Even if the company has the best of intentions of never recording any conversation, a hacker that can tap into the device just got themselves a microphone into your house. So is that a risk that you're willing to accept? It appears that the resounding answer to these kinds of questions is yes, we're willing to give all of our data away. We're willing to accept these risks as individuals. So we need to have a conversation about that, because that actually affects the concept of privacy. What is private today? And incidentally, that's the title of my next book. So what is private today? If you think about it, even in a period of just very short years having to do with privacy, you may remember the disgraced Congressman Weiner in New York with all the sexting pictures and so on and so forth. I question if that scandal was to be revealed today, if the same implications would have occurred. Because we are increasingly being desensitized from that. It appears to be a common thing right now that one expose after another and crass language and so on and so forth is happening from all sorts of officials. It's becoming the thing du jour. So our concept of privacy is changing. And by implication, our understanding of risk is changing. When we have the Alexas and the Google's assistants and Facebook's running all the time, and we're giving all of our data away, we are implicitly granting permission for all of this stuff to be out there.
Yeah, no, and it makes us need to, as you say, have the conversation. I think that's why I'm glad you're on the show. I'm glad you're on the show today and helping to enlighten our listeners on this, because I think it's these topics and matters that we're dealing with that, you're right, are going to change and evolve over time. But understanding it, having the conversation and where it stands is great. I wanted to shift this a little bit to you.
The Europeans, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add a quick note on the concept of cybersecurity and data protection. The Europeans have GDPR, and I'm sure that there's been a lot. Everybody has been receiving all these updated notices about opting in and my emails and so on and so forth. All of these have to do with GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation that just got into effect from the European Union, that has fairly strict requirements about how a company can gather data and the rights of individuals to this data in terms of the rights of erasure, the rights of access, and so on and so forth. You will see in the years ahead these kinds of regulations filter into the United States and filter into our way of doing life, because there is a moment of reckoning that's coming. Where do we stand with this? What is private? Where do we draw the line? Where is this line? So that's going to happen, and to some degree it's going to happen by legislation. On the government side, the issue of nation states hacking other governments and hacking their elections and so on and so forth is obviously a very, very dangerous thing. So that is going to have to be dealt with international frameworks and treaties and alliances and so on and so forth. So the bottom line, understanding the topic, understanding the issue, establishing a communications pathway between all of us, legislators, business people, and consumers, is going to be critical to the society that we want to form going forward, and to the way that we do business, and to the way that we protect our assets. And at the end of the day, this is what my book is all about, and this is what a lot of work that we have been doing is about, is connecting these dots, creating an understanding, creating an environment where all of us can complete a handshake in this and make the right decision for us.
Love it, and I think our listeners and our readers will actually love, and we'll make sure that we provide all the links, and we'll get to that in a sec. Chris, if you could, you write, you consult, you obviously speak. Which do you like doing the most?
What I like doing the most is actually engaging with a client whom we refer to as a partner. There is nothing more rewarding than being given the privilege of trust by a client, or a client calls you into their business and says, listen, I don't know what I don't know. This is what I want to do. What do you think? That is a great moment of trust and an exchange. And it's a great moment of honor for me. And I absolutely love rolling up my sleeves, sitting down with a client and say, okay, what do we need to do? Let's think about this. And we are honored and privileged to contribute to that client. And we learn just as much from the client as we contribute back to them. That is the thing that really makes me very happy. Obviously, I love writing. Obviously, I love technology. I love cybersecurity. I love all of this. And I love the people that work for me that make me look so bright, because, my God, they have forgotten more than they know, than I know. So, but there's nothing more important to me than this exchange of trust and this collaboration between two people aligning towards a common goal.
Great stuff. Chris, I love to ask this question to all the Thrive Loud guests, whether it's your writing, your work with your clients, and any of the things that you do. When you have trouble thriving, who or what do you turn to personally to get back on the thriving track?
The first person that I will look to is my partner in life and my partner in business, Anna Murray. So when I feel ambiguous about something, when I have questions, I will always go to Anna as my first stop, as my touchstone to reality and touchstone to business and solid advice. And then I will also depend on the advice and counsel of the people around me. I have been privileged to have an incredible staff that surrounds me, that allows me to do what I do, that allows me to have the hours necessary to write and to teach and to do cybersecurity awareness and all of the consulting that I do. All of this is because I have an unbelievable staff working for me that always challenges me and always supports me. So that is exactly where I go to get both support and actually get the rejuvenation. I love working with all the young people that are in my company, because that certainly keeps me young.
Awesome. Let's do the plug section here, and let's lead with, before we, in that, if you could share with the Thrive Out listeners where people can find you, a little bit about, obviously, your company, a chance to talk about where that is, where they can find you, all the websites, links, and also where they can get the new book or all the other previous books and learn more about you.
Well, okay. So there are many websites. Obviously, the book itself has a website called Cybersecurity for Business. It's with dashes in between the words. The easiest site to spell where you can find our business is tmgr.com. That's Tom, Mary, George, Robert.com. And that is the managed services business, because TMG E-Media now is actually essentially three companies. TMG E-Media.com, by the way, is the strategic consultancy. E-Media LLC is Anna's business, which is a woman-certified business that does software development, and that's emediaweb.com. And TMGR.com, which is the technology management group, is the managed services business that does managed IT services and managed cybersecurity. So that's the triangle: consulting, development, support. And the book, as I mentioned, has its own website, cybersecurity for business, cybersecurity for business. And I can be reached there very, very easily. There's links that you can click, and you can send me emails, and you can chat and all that good stuff. The book can be found anywhere. It's published by Wiley, so it can be found on Amazon. It can be found at the Wiley site. It can be found at Barnes & Noble. And most recently was reviewed very favorably by Kirkus Reviews, which is nice. A very, very nice thing to see.
Oh, that's great. And by the way, we will put all these links in the show notes for the podcast page here for you. And don't worry, we'll make sure it's out there. But it always comes better when people can hear it from you as well. All right. So, Chris.
Thank you very much.
two last points here as we bring our conversation here to an end, because we've literally just flown through time. My first thing is, can you give one word of advice, I guess, from the seat that you've been in as the expert to all the listeners out there? And many of our listeners are entrepreneurs and business leaders that are always thinking about technology and everything around it that your expertise has. If there was one piece of advice you could give them that they could walk away with from our conversation today, what would it be?
One piece of advice,
just one,
is you remember X-Files?
Yes.
Trust no one. Trust no one. That is my piece of advice, is trust no one. There are very practical steps that you can take to protect yourself from a cybersecurity point of view, but unless you really understand the concepts and the risks, those are checklists, and cybersecurity as a checklist is a very, very bad idea. It's like healthcare as a checklist, bad. So, but certainly having different passwords across all of your different services is one of the things that you need to do. You need to be changing that. You need to be very, very careful and fall back to always trust no one. You get an email with a link, you get an email from Lou that it sounds a little bit different than previous emails. Call the man up. Yep. You get an email from somebody that you don't know. Don't click the link. Use your common sense. Don't do that. Pick up the phone and call the person. You get to make a lot more friends that way. It's like, hey, Bob, I just got this very strange email. Did you send it? So just go take that route. So there are a few elementary practical steps that have to do with password complexity and changing your passwords and using different passwords across different services. But it also has to do with remember the X-Files. Just trust no one. Pick up the phone and call.
I love it. Signature final question here, Chris. Your all-time favorite movie?
The Martian. I would definitely go with The Martian. I would think, there is many, but especially when it comes to cybersecurity, it is a movie that has resonated with me so much, especially because of its closing line. I don't know if you've seen the movie or if your listeners maybe have seen it or not. So once Watney finally gets back to Earth safe and sound, he is now the instructor at the academy for the new astronauts. And one of the things that he turns around and tells all the young cadets is, listen, space doesn't cooperate. Yep. It will go south on you. And when it does, you're going to have a choice. You can either say, I'm going to end here right now, or you're going to work the problem. You're going to do the math. You're going to solve one problem and then solve the other one and then solve the next, and you get to go home. And that is the perfect line for cybersecurity. I don't want people to panic. I don't want people to be intimidated. But yes, things will go south on you. And when they do, you have a choice. And if you have taken the right steps and if you have established a good cybersecurity program and you have your best practices in place, you will recover just fine. So that's why The Martian is my favorite movie.
It's great. And it's an awesome flick. I love that scene when he says, do the math. I think I also love the fact that recently I went down to Cape Canaveral with my family, and we're going to Mars. We're going. And this movie was like in 2030, we're going to be there. And I think it's just fascinating because
yes, we are.
Planning and the writing, you can see that how much real thought and real math literally went into the making of the movie and the book. And it's
that's right.
Inspiring. And when we get there, I'm sure, it'll hopefully, the character and the role that they've come out, and those incidents don't happen. When they go there. But more notably, it's impressive. The space program is back in
I hope so. I hope so. I can't wait. I am excited about all the positive effects of technology, all the positive effects of AI, all the positive effects that we as people can affect our society. So I am thrilled. I can't wait to see all of these developments and get engaged with all of them and in a way shape them.
Chris Moschovitis, this was a fun interview. I think our listeners are going to love it. Thanks for making things simple, easy to understand, and for sharing everything that you have today with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be part of this incredible podcast that you have for your audience. Thank you for having me.
No, it's truly our pleasure. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for listening. Keep thriving, onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, begone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.